Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Next Go Wins podcast. I'm joined by my friend, Joe D.
Wow, I'm your friend now.
My only friend.
Not your co-host.
And well, first of all, before I get into that, Joe, how are the stats looking?
I was actually just looking at the Instagram, and we have videos that have been viewed over 150 times. So the stats are looking great on Instagram.
You know what's crazy about that? So 150 views is nothing, right? You're like, dude, that's terrible.
Yeah.
But the fact that 150 people, maybe not 150 people, but 150 times somebody watched our video.
It's crazy.
It's actually quite a lot.
Well, you have that, then you have our TikTok videos, which get one of them, over 1 million views. It is weird how that works, but
yeah,
the algos are starting to like us on Instagram, but TikTok,
we're not fully dead.
We're not.
We're gasping for our last breath.
But Georgie is dead, and that's why he's not here.
Well, Georgie's not dead. Joe, we had to clarify that one early. But yeah, it is with how do they say it? It is with
great sadness.
Great sadness that we announce that Georgie has left the podcast. Georgie is not here, obviously, as you can see, because we haven't.
Can I pour one out for my dead homie?
I mean, not in my living room, but Georgie has decided that, I don't know, is he too good for this podcast? He didn't like us so much. He hated us so much that he didn't just decide to leave this podcast. He decided to leave the country.
Yeah. The continent even.
The continent, yeah. So.
Literally flew across the world.
Was it because of us?
Well, I know it wasn't to go watch Burnley.
Definitely not. No, so Georgie is actually in England right now. So this is how hard the Jurgen Klopp news hit him. So bad that he felt so much sadness in his heart about Jurgen Klopp leaving, he decided to look up flights, hotels, tickets for Liverpool games so he could go watch Jurgen Klopp in his last season at Liverpool.
See, it's funny. I thought he was just going over there because he got a job offer to be Darwin Núñez's stunt double, but then I saw pictures of him at Anfield, which looked pretty fun.
So Georgie is actually in England right now. He's not really off the podcast. I mean, only just because he's not here right now. But he went to go watch Liverpool versus Burnley. Then he went to go watch what was the other game that he went
Crystal
to?
Palace, Chelsea, I think.
Crystal Palace, Chelsea.
Yep.
Excuse me. And then he's going to go watch one more game, which is Liverpool against, I don't know who it is.
They play Brentford, I think, this weekend?
Maybe it's Brentford.
Because he's in London, right?
Yeah.
Because he started in Liverpool and
but
then went down to London.
He basically just went on Twitter and asked people that weren't going to use their tickets if they had an extra ticket or something. And yeah, some good people over in Liverpool hooked him up. So that's nice. And then I think he even got a couple people to go and like give him a tour of the city and all sorts of stuff. So he's been very well taken care of. I think it is probably something to do with the Darwin Núñez stunt double, because the first thing that he said to me was that he's been called Darwin Núñez like 10 times when he went to go watch the game.
I could see the fans just chanting the Darwin Núñez chant, like as they walked to the stadium, just at Georgie. We should have got him a Darwin Núñez jersey before we went.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he got something when he was
missed
over there.
Opportunity.
But Georgie will be back in the next episode. I would assume, so long as he still wants to be part of this podcast.
We're gonna have another episode after this.
I mean, we're getting close to
36.
I think this is 38.
Wow, it's almost 40.
When you start losing count, that's when you know you're doing okay. So I think we're getting to that point. We're actually pretty close to 50 now if we just keep this up.
Yeah,
which is great. Anyway, so as usual, our intros get longer and longer every single time. Let's get into the pre-cap. The pre-cap, we'll talk a little bit about the Prem. Obviously, that's back now. A little bit of a table update, maybe some more predictions now that we're starting to get closer and closer to the end. We'll talk a little bit about Champions League. A couple of the teams have started playing in the round of 16 in the first leg. A little bit of the transfer talk segment, because there's a big one. There's a big one there. Wildcard segment is going to, I know we're a little late, but wildcard segment is going to revolve around Valentine's Day. So we'll talk about some of the things that we love as part of the game. All right. And then the VAR room, there's a couple of things going on in the world of football that we missed that we're going to go back and take a look at. And then we've decided to add a new segment, which is the off the pitch segment. So obviously this is a football podcast, but I think we'll every once in a while add a segment that talks about something completely different, and see if people like that. And if not, I don't know if we'll really be able to tell the difference because not that many people listen to us anyway. So, and then fun facts. We always got to end with a fun fact, which this one is relevant to the time right now that we're in, so it's going to be perfect. But Joe, I'm going to pass it on to you. The Premier League is back.
Yes. Thank goodness.
Couple big results, especially for us Arsenal fans. Where are we standing right now in the Prem?
Sitting third, tied on points with Manchester City, and because of the demolition against West Ham, we've made up a lot in goal differential, which is amazing to see. Obviously, City still have a game in hand. We also have to travel to the Etihad and play City, so there's still a ton to play for. 3 teams now in the race. Liverpool's sitting, I want to say, at 54 points?
Yeah.
Yep. So I think it's going to come down to the wire. It's going to come down to a few big games, assuming the big teams can handle all the other teams, like the small teams, and not drop points, because any drop points now till the end of the season are going to be huge. So I'm really, really excited for it. And I prefer being where we are this year compared to where we were last year. When you have, I think, a bunch of younger players and you have a big lead, like people are always expecting you to like bottle it and drop it. And I think we're kind of on the outskirts looking in, if that makes sense. Because I think most people are assuming Liverpool, obviously, with a 2-point advantage. City, if they win their game in hand, leapfrog Liverpool. So it's City's to lose. And I think a lot of people think Liverpool, City, and we can kind of just hang in the background.
Yeah.
If we can travel to the Etihad, get a result, all of a sudden, game on.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the last year when this was around the point that we really started dropping points, right?
We were up, I think, like 8 points, but it was also inflated because City had so many games still in hand too.
Yeah, but the pressure of like keeping that big of a lead, we had all of the spotlight on us.
Yep.
Whereas this year, I think I wouldn't say that people don't think that we're going to win it, but we're definitely not the favorites. Mm-hmm. And so I think a little bit less spotlight on us to perform, but also we do have the pressure of putting pressure on Liverpool and City, and knowing that any dropped points now are crucial in the title race. Whereas last year, I think when you have a cushion of 6, 7, 8 points, naturally you're going to kind of, I wouldn't say take the foot off the pedal, but you don't feel as bad when you drop points because you're like, yeah, we still got a cushion or whatever. We're still a few points ahead. Now it's like, all right, no more messing around because we have to get points. Because if we don't, Manchester City's just going to run away with it.
And I think if you look at the statement games we've had since we've come back, a 5-0 victory and then a 6-0 victory, like we're putting ourselves in positions where it's like, you know what, we aren't just stepping out on the pitch anymore to just kind of compete. We want to go and win games and by a good margin. So we'll see. I will say, with that being said, Manchester City look amazing. They looked good against Copenhagen. Kevin De Bruyne,
man,
is clinical.
Crazy.
He's just
crazy how at that level you could take time off not on purpose but because of an injury and then come back and be just as good if not better than you were before.
He's impressive, man. He really is, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can stay healthy through the rest of the season. Obviously, he hasn't played many games because he has been injured, but it's.
So let me ask you a question.
It's going to be fun. Yeah.
Does the Premier League this year go down to the last day?
The last day. Yeah, I guess I could see it going down to the last game or two. It all depends, I think, on how if we lose to Manchester City, that will be detrimental to us and our title hopes. That assuming we can draw even that game, I think it can come down to the last day. However, if City beats Liverpool and City beats us, they'll run away with it. But if I had to pick, I'd say no. I think it will be decided in the second to third to last game.
Interesting.
What about you? What do you think?
I think it'll go down to the last day. I don't know if it'll be us and Liverpool and City. I think it'll be two of us. Because I think depending on some of the results that still have to, or some of the matches that still have to be played, I think it'll end up being, I think for sure it's going to be City. I think it's just going to be whether it's us or Liverpool.
And who can hang at that speed for as long. Yeah.
And I think I think the excuse me. I think the game against Manchester City for us is going to be the one that, like you said, decides whether we're going to be in it on the last match day. I think if we lose to them, we're definitely not in the last match day. I think
we need to get really lucky then, and they need to drop points, which I don't really see happening. But again, you never know.
But if we do get a result against City, I think it does go to the last match day between us and City. But the only thing about Liverpool now is that with Klopp leaving, it almost makes for one of those fairy tale endings where the players, the fans, everyone's going to be in support of Liverpool trying to win the last Premier League before Klopp leaves. And
I think if the crazy part too about Liverpool still, and I'm glad Jordy's not here to talk about this because he'd rant about it, is they should be, 4 to 7 points higher than where they are, assuming some calls go their way at the beginning of the year. Like, they've been playing really, really well, and they keep getting better. Darwin is playing better. Jota is playing amazing, and they're doing this all with Salah out. That when he comes back, it will be, I think, like extra wind in their sails, if you will. So it'll be tough, I think, for us to keep pace. But again, it comes down to that game at the Etihad. If we can go there, get something. Gosh, could you imagine beating City 2 times in one season? Home and away.
That's always going to be almost pretty close to impossible, to be honest. But
to win the league is what you got to do, though.
Exactly. That's the thing. When you're in a league with Manchester City, you have to be able to do things like that in order to just kind of have a chance, to be honest. 100%. It is impressive though for Liverpool. The fact that since Klopp has gotten here, essentially last season was the only bad season that they've had. That wasn't a season of growth for Liverpool. And if there was any doubters last year, and anybody who said, like, oh, he should be sacked or anything, it just shows you how good of a manager he was that this year they're right back on top, being one of the best teams in the Premier League.
Yeah. While spending way less money than both Arsenal and Manchester City. Overall, it's going to be a sad day at the end of the season, regardless of who wins the title. And just, I think if you're a fan of the game, with Klopp no longer playing or coaching in England, it'll be sad because he's an interesting character, and I think he's just an overall good dude, man.
So we haven't talked about this really since the news came out, which is a while ago now. But who really is the next best manager for the Liverpool job?
I think it's a clear-cut answer, especially after the result over the weekend with Leverkusen beating Bayern. I think that they will jog to the title in Germany. And if I'm Xabi Alonso, who's come out and said he wants to play for all the clubs he's played for in the past, going from Leverkusen to Bayern, I don't think makes a ton of sense directly, right? Go to Liverpool. It's the perfect time. Everything is aligned for you. It is all set up. Klopp is leaving it in great hands. The team is great. The players are great. The fans are behind everything. And then you can bring in arguably the hottest manager in world football right now. So I could see Xabi Alonso. I also read something where your boy, Highline, Big Ange, is potentially lining up for an interview at Liverpool, which, I don't know if it's true, but my money, if I was a betting man, which I am not, but if I was, I would put it on Xabi Alonso to Liverpool. What about you?
I think that's the clearest option. The only criticism or the only thing about that is people will say that he's doesn't have as much experience as some of the other ones that they could choose. But if he goes on to win the league with Leverkusen in a league that's been dominated by Bayern Munich for the last decade, and literally the last person to win it before Bayern
was Klopp.
with Dortmund, right?
The stars align in every way.
And so puts in a masterclass of a performance against Bayern Munich, wins 3-0, gives himself a couple of points of, and it's crazy because they're undefeated. They're the only team in Europe in the top leagues that's undefeated, and yet they're still not running away with the league. Like they're just 2 bad performances away from Bayern Munich getting the top spot again. Which is crazy. I think they're like 4 or 5 points ahead.
They have 5 points. I just pulled up 5 points clear. But again, so they'd have to lose. They'd have to do something they haven't done twice, and let's lose 2 games.
Right. But it's
or draw.
If you're Bayern Munich or if you're Manchester City, that's a lot harder for it to happen because you know how well those teams will play.
Yep.
But when you're a team like Girona or Bayer Leverkusen, you just never know if there's eventually going to be a drop-off, or Arsenal last season, if there's going to be a drop-off, just because they haven't been there consistently. Anyway, back to the original question. I do think he's the best fit. I do think it's one of those things where, does he have as much experience? No, but just the fact that he is who he is and what he's been doing and being a legend for the club, you kind of have to bring him in. Mm-hmm. My preferred candidate for it originally was Pep Linders, the assistant under Klopp, because he knows
the players.
He knows the players. He's very passionate about it. They've shown him on camera multiple times. And I was like, why wouldn't you do it? Because most of the time, as an assistant coach, at some point you want to be a head coach as well. So you're just like, you're getting your experience, and then eventually that's going to get you your head coaching job. From what it seems like is that he's leaving too. He said, he's like, I'm leaving with Klopp. Klopp has also said that he's not even sure if he's going to manage again. Like, he's like, he said in an interview, he's like, if you ask me if I'm ever going to manage a team again, the answer right now is no. So typically when you work at that level, when you work as an assistant for a head coach, you guys are tied together. Like, you as an assistant are out of a job if he's out of a job. And then when he has a job, you have a job. Because he'll bring you along wherever. They have their staff and they bring them along. So if I was Pep Linders, I would say to Klopp, I was like, all right, well, what's the next plan? Or fine, let's take a break, but you just call me when you're ready. But if I'm working for a guy that says I might not ever manage again, then obviously you're going to start being like, okay, well, I have to start doing something on my own. So I was just thinking he would have been the perfect candidate because he can kind of carry the momentum that they have now with the same philosophy or with a similar philosophy and kind of keep them on the same path. But if he's out, then I would assume Xabi Alonso's, there's no more perfect candidate at the moment than him.
We'll see. It's, I guess I hadn't thought about Pep Linders, but to what you're saying makes sense. Unless he's done too.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine.
He said he was done. He said, I didn't see the interview. Georgie told me, he's like, no, he said he's leaving. So that leaves us with Xabi Alonso, big age, and
Roy Hodgson.
Is there really? Is there really any other big, like, Zinedine Zidane's? Everyone knows that he's waiting for the France
national
team job. So there's really not that many people out of a job that you would say are doing so well at the moment that you would want to bring them in.
And I also think I think Liverpool wants to go with, because if you look at how things were prior to Klopp, like, they went through managers pretty quickly because nothing was sticking and working, and they've had now a long period of time that I think a club like Liverpool, now that they have that base and foundation again, that they want to get somebody in there that will commit 5 to 7 years.
Right.
So I could see them wanting a newer manager, but we shall see. Are you looking up Roy Hodgson?
Yeah, so the next one I want to talk about is Roy Hodgson getting sacked. I was confusing him before the podcast with David Moyes for some reason.
Okay.
But yeah, Roy Hodgson got sacked. Georgie was actually at that game, at the Crystal Palace versus Chelsea game. And
that was Roy Hodgson's last game, right?
I believe so, yeah.
So
he's done. They're replacing him with, let me get this name right, Glasner, who I don't know anything about. But it's Oliver Glasner. So they fired Hodgson, immediately appointed this guy, which means that they were basically just waiting for this guy, the contract and everything to be approved before they let Hodgson go.
Yeah.
So they already had the replacement. They already knew they were going to sack him. It was just based on this guy's appointment. Georgie was at the game, and I told him, I was like, how was the atmosphere there versus the atmosphere at Anfield? And he said that Anfield was way better, obviously, because of kind of how things are going this season and with Klopp and everything, the support for Klopp. But he said that people are tired. At Crystal Palace, people are tired of Hodgson, and you could tell with the vibes around the stadium. Like, people aren't happy with him.
They just want
so they wanted him out.
It makes sense. They've been a terrible run of form. Looking really bad, not showing any fight. So it sucks and it's sad because, Roy Hodgson's been a coach literally since we were born.
Since the dawn of time.
Yeah. But.
All right, so let's move on to the Champions League. Champions League round of 16. PSG 2-0 beating Sociedad in the first leg. Pretty expected result, I would say. Lazio beating Bayern 1-0 at home. Bayern did get a red card in that game, I think in like the 68th, 69th minute or something like that.
Yeah. Which that hurts, losing him for the second leg.
So, of course, and the problem is Bayern are at risk of not winning any trophies this season, which is crazy because, again, you said the conspiracy theory of
Granit Xhaka taking everything from Tottenham.
And Harry Kane could be... So something will change because Harry Kane has never won a trophy. And
Kingsley Coman has never not won a trophy.
Never not won a trophy. So one of those is going to
well,
break.
Coincidentally, which of the two just got injured? Kingsley Coman, and he's out for a while.
So then does that technically not break his record if he doesn't?
If he's not there to... so one of my... I hope Bayern gets eliminated this round of the Champions League and Arsenal goes through. Because I have a wager at work with one of my coworkers who's a Bayern fan.
He just said if I was a betting man, which I'm not...
I will get another Arsenal jersey. This one was free. That. Thank you, Kyle Gill, from the Manchester City fan.
Racking up the Arsenal jerseys.
I don't think they're going to pull it off. I really don't. I don't know why. I watched the game against Leverkusen. They did not look good then. I did not watch all of the Lazio game. I watched the highlights. They did not look good there. They just don't. They can't piece things together. They don't have much... they don't have many players to bring off the bench. Gnabry's been out. Coman now out.
Yeah, I looked at their lineup for the
attacking-wise,
Leverkusen game, and they didn't look...
They're struggling.
Yeah.
And it's... I don't want to say I'm happy to see Bayern not do well, but I am happy to see an ex-Tottenham player not win a trophy. That makes me very happy.
I will say it gladly. I knew this was going to happen the moment they sacked Nagelsmann. I told you guys this.
Nagelsmann's a great coach.
But I... just
why just because they wanted Nagelsmann out and you're like, this is karma gonna come back and get you because like you're just looking to get him out when he's doing well.
With all of the drama and the politics when transfers and we talk about like VAR corruption and how things are so messed up in all different places, I've always looked at the Germans as having their shit together.
Yeah.
Like I've always seen them as like pretty smart, like very smart people who know exactly what they want. They know exactly how they're going to get it. And they don't fuck around with, the politics of social media and
£100,000 transfer fees and stuff as much as it is like,
get
great players on freeze.
Exactly. And they've always been smart about like, we don't need that player if it doesn't make sense to what we're trying to do for success. The moment they started doing this whole thing when they wanted to get Nagelsmann out and they wanted to bring Tuchel in, I was like, what are you guys doing? This is not how you guys typically operate. And now they're like doubling down, saying Tuchel has all of our support. I even read a quote that they said him and his staff are working very meticulously, and now we need a spark to turn this around from the players because it's like the players' responsibility. I'm like, fair enough. Of course it is. It's the manager and the player's responsibility, but I don't know, man. You
think that they're going to get knocked out to Lazio, or do you think they'll finally?
I think they'll get through. I think they'll get through
this round.
Yeah, I think they'll get through. I think they'll score at least 2 or 3 at home. My prediction would be like a 3-1 or
something like that,
3-2 or whatever, something like that. But I don't see them getting past, depending on who their next opponent is. I just don't. Looking at everybody who's still in, there's at least 2 or 3 teams that I feel are going to beat Bayern when they.
Once they come up against a pretty strong opponent, unless something fluky happens, that they're going to get bounced. That's what you're saying. I can see that. I'm hoping Lazio gets an early goal because it's one of those things at home. You're already down 1-0. If Lazio can squeak out a goal in the first half and go up 2-0 on aggregate, I think the atmosphere in that stadium will just almost fall apart, and it could be an advantage for Lazio. But we'll see. And
we'll see if they can hold on.
PSG looked pretty good.
Speaking of PSG, that moves us into the transfer talk segment. The saga, and I think I mentioned this too, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of credit for this. We talked about Mbappe was always at some point going to go to Real Madrid. I told you guys that if he was going to go, he's got to go now. Because if he doesn't go now, I even used the reference of like when they make boxing fights like 5 years too late. And it's like it's not the same as if they would have done it in their prime. So the reason I say this is because finally Mbappe, according to the reports, has told PSG that he wants to go to Real Madrid and that he's going to go to Real Madrid. However, the contract that he's offered by Real Madrid now is nowhere near the same amount that they offered him in 2022 when this whole drama was starting. And it's way less salary-wise as well than the one that's being offered at PSG and the one he's currently on right now. So he's going to take a pretty big pay cut in order to go Real Madrid. But Real Madrid has said that this is the most that they're going to do because they're done with the whole
saga of
drama.
It. Like, you can either come if you want to play here.
Take it or leave it.
We're not paying you to be the best player in the world because we already have Jude.
Yep.
And Vinny's playing out of this world. Honestly, Real Madrid has the bargaining power to do it now. Before, I think they really needed him. Vinny was growing into what he's become. But now watching Vinny in these big games, he shows up and he shows out. Then you have Jude, same thing. You have Rodrigo on the other side. Having Mbappe is more of a luxury, I think. Like, they can easily win the Champions, not easily, but they can win the Champions League
with the squad that they have.
With the squad they have. And they
For
can
sure.
win consistent Champions League with the squad they have now. So, good for them from a business standpoint, not dealing with it. Does that sway Mbappe's decision and say, you know what? Okay, if you don't want me, or you're not willing to shell out what you need or what I want, do you think he says, I'm going to go somewhere else or I'm going to stay in France?
I don't know.
I guess, which do you think would be more likely? If he doesn't go to Real Madrid, to stay at PSG, or to go somewhere different?
It's a tough one. And the reason why I think it's tough is because he strikes me as a guy who's trying to get the most amount of money possible. Because if he wasn't, he would have been at Real Madrid already. Because when he was at PSG and the whole thing started with Real Madrid, they offered him a lot of money
He stayed.
that would have matched a lot closer to the PSG salary, and he decided to stay after all, which to me was like, okay, they must have offered him a lot more money. So the fact that now he's willing to go, like, if it doesn't go through, and if I was Real Madrid, I'd be questioning myself because I'm like, what they have going on right now is great. And if they put Mbappe and then now all of a sudden you have to start thinking about who do you drop or who do you bench out of all the players that they have,
Right.
could create a little bit of some issues. So anyway, back to your question. I feel like if I was him, I'd be sick and tired of being at PSG. He's been there for a long time.
Yep.
He hasn't, it's just like very monotonous there at this point. He wins the league every year. He doesn't win the Champions League. It's become the same routine over and over. So from a competitive standpoint, I would say I want to go to Liverpool or I want to go to Arsenal or I don't know, pick any team.
Right.
Try a new challenge, go somewhere else. He's still quite young, so he has the opportunity to go and get different trophies and compete for different things. But then the other side of him, well, anywhere I go is not going to pay me anywhere near as much as PSG is paying me, so I might as well just ride it out here and make a crap ton of money. So I don't know, but I think at this point it's pretty certain that he's leaving to Real Madrid, and he's willing to take a pay cut just because he's made so much goddamn money in PSG already.
Does any of that change if PSG wins the Champions League this year?
Maybe, but I think even if you win, I think it'll make it easier for him to leave because then he's like, all right, now I finally won the Champions League.
And you will feel less guilty leaving. I gave you the title you've been asking for, and it's like the town of the Klopp farewell, a great walk off the stage type moment, mic drop.
Yeah, when I was young, a little quick story time. I played for a club team, right? We were pretty good. We were okay. There was another club team that was like 15 minutes away that we used to play all the time because they were in the league. They weren't very good, but they had one guy who could dribble past like our whole team, and they would beat us by like 1 or 2 goals, or maybe probably just 1 goal, just because he would somehow manage to dribble past everyone. And in my head, I'm like, we are so much better than this team besides this one guy. So I always thought, like, could we not just convince this guy to come to our team and we'd be even better? Because we're already better than the team.
Right.
But now with this guy, we'd be really good.
Even if you didn't score, you could put him on the bench and you guys would beat him then because at least he's not scoring against us.
So I wonder if like that would be the same thing with him, where he would be like, yeah, even if he does win a Champions League with PSG, let's say. However, if he goes to Real Madrid, they would be so much better because of him and than some of the other teams.
The thing I cannot wrap my mind around though, where does he play at Real Madrid? Because that means you're going to, if he wants to play in his natural position, you have to move Vinny. And I don't think they would do that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like,
Or just playing both on the left wing and just say, we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? It's because then you're going to play Mbappe as the 9.
I mean, you're going to have to put somebody as on the other side.
Well, Rodrigo.
Right. So, but that's what I'm saying. So, like, you think...
So then you put Mbappe on the other side? Because that's not natural for him.
So you think who are your two best between those three? Rodrigo, Vinicius, and Mbappe. And you're going to have to pick those two. And then once you pick those two...
You put one on the right?
You do what I do with my girls. You know what I do with my girls that I coach at the club? I'm like, you two are on the wings. You girls figure it out which wing you're on.
Oh, and like you can switch, flop.
I'll let you girls decide because to me it doesn't matter. Whatever you're more comfortable with.
And throughout the game, it will probably change as time goes and have a fluid system. But
so I think with them, it's just be like, all right, you two are going to be our starting wingers. Where do you guys feel more comfortable? Figure it out. I'll let you guys decide because you're going to be just as effective for the most part.
We'll see what happens.
And then did you hear that Benzema was dropped by his club in Saudi Arabia because he refuses to train with the reserves?
Wait, who?
Benzema. So they dropped him and they told him, or sorry, not with the reserves, individually. I think they told him he had to train individually.
He's like, I'm not doing that.
And he's like, no. And so they dropped him. And now, once again, the circus has restarted.
Now he's stuck. Now he's stuck there because the transfer window's closed. And
they tried to loan him out to another team in Saudi Arabia, which he said no.
Well, I just don't understand why, like, I don't know. Why not sell him? The sad part is this is how Benzema's probably going to end his career or he's going to come to America. But it's like, what? I don't know. Such an amazing striker. And to have to deal with that, it's just sad.
Yeah, but what is there left for him to accomplish other than just get as much money possible before he retires?
I mean, it's
Champions League.
I know, but like you know how
should
it
have
is,
won
man.
a World Cup.
You get to he did. Yeah, his country did. He just wasn't on the damn. He could have won 2.
And yeah, he could have won 2 World Cups. All the Champions League that he's won. Ballon d'Or.
But the competitor in you, I would assume, I don't know him, but I would assume to get to that level, he's an extremely competitive human being. That part of me, like, if you get to that point, like, you've already done it for so long, you want to keep going. You know, because he could have retired. He didn't have to go to Saudi Arabia. He could have gone there. Or he also could have gone there and just kind of gone through the motions and collected a paycheck. But it sounds like there's some... well, there's some level of disagreement, though, in terms of him in the club, I would assume, in something, right? I don't know what it is. But I don't know.
But see, just the fact that he went to Saudi Arabia, though, to me, shows me not necessarily that he's not a competitor, because he is, because obviously all the things that he's done. Mm-hmm. But I think, to me, the competitor side is not as important anymore because he's won everything.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Which is similar to, like, Messi coming to the MLS, because Messi could have played for another big club. But he was like, I've won everything. I've completed football. He even said it himself. He's like, I've essentially completed football. So now
like
it's
just career mode, and he's literally done everything.
Now it's just enjoy. Like it's. Did you ever play GTA?
Like
Grand Theft
GTA
Auto?
2 and 3, yeah.
Like just any of those games.
Yes.
If you ever completed the storyline, once you completed the storyline, you would go back and play the game and just fuck around the whole time.
Yeah.
Like you'd go into the streets
kill people,
and kill
take random cars. Like how many stars can I get? How many cops can I fight?
You do like these little side quests missions on your own. Yeah. So essentially, that's what's happening with Messi and like players like Benzema. They've completed football. They've won all the things that they know that they have the opportunity to win. So now they're just messing around and like, I'll just collect as much possible money as I can
while doing some side quests.
Yeah. Boom.
Hey, it is interesting, but we'll see.
All right, let's get into the wild card segment then. Wild card segment for today is Valentine's Day, even though Valentine's Day was yesterday or 2 days ago now by the time you guys are watching this. Let's do some of the things that we love. First of all, the player that you love the most. Not personally, but just your favorite. You know what I mean? The game that you loved watching the most in your time on this planet. Manager, and then the celebration that you love the most out of all the celebrations that have been done. So let's start with player. Which one was your favorite player of all time, Joe?
As an Arsenal fan, like the easy answer is Thierry Henry. Growing up, I loved watching him play, and I loved because he played for Arsenal, obviously. However, like the player that watching them made me the happiest in terms of just like what they do is different out there, and there's nobody like them. And I have distinct memories of Ronaldinho. He was just he plays very opposite of me, very flashy, can do anything. And it was like watching an artist create something out of nothing all of the time. And it was like, it didn't matter if he was with the Brazilian national team. It didn't matter at AC Milan or if it was Barcelona. Like, you never knew what was going to happen with him. The second he would get the ball, maybe he's doing something insane you've never seen. And he just did it all. And I think the thing I loved the most about it is he always looked so happy while doing it. He always was smiling. Rafael Leao's kind of like that now. Like every picture you see of him, he's always out there smiling and enjoying himself. But Ronaldinho for me.
It's a good one.
What about you?
Surprisingly, it is a goalkeeper. And I was a goalkeeper for 3 years in high school. And for whatever weird reason, I just decided to be a goalkeeper. But my idol during that time was Iker Casillas. And so Iker Casillas was always my favorite player of all time. So when someone asked me who was your favorite player of all time, I always say Iker. I was like dressed. I remember. So
same like
yeah,
goalkeeper jersey and
his
everything.
2008. I think it was the Euros jersey or Euros uniform. It was either Euros or the World Cup.
When Spain won that.
But I think it was 2008.
Yeah.
He had this amazing black with it had like a yellow stripe. And then, so I couldn't find the kit. I found the jersey through some dark web website that I managed to find the jersey. And this was when I was in high school, so I didn't have any money. So I paid like $15 for this jersey. Showed up like 3 months after I ordered it. I went on like another website and I found shorts that were as close to those shorts that he was wearing and socks that were as close to the ones that he was wearing. And that was my kit for my high school, I think it was junior year, sophomore.
Not for your club
year.
team, but for your actual high school team?
Yeah. And
That's
I mean,
fine.
nobody ever said anything except one referee told me to take the jersey off because he's like, you don't play for Spain. And I was like, yeah, but we don't have like a goalkeeper issued jersey at my high school. So anyway.
Give points to that referee. Good for you.
Yeah. So
you
anyway,
don't play for Spain, you dummy.
he just, he was like, he had a cool haircut. He was young. Like in that movie with Santiago Munez. The Goal movie. When he goes to Real Madrid and he like ends up going to like a party with all the Real Madrid players and they're all like hanging out at the pool, just having a good time. And Iker Casillas is and they actually got these guys to act in the movie, right? Mm-hmm. And Iker Casillas is just like hanging out in the pool. And I thought he was like the coolest person in that scene. And for me, I always like, man, if you could be anyone in the world,
He's the
be
one.
Iker Casillas.
He was great to watch. I don't know. The thing I liked the most about Casillas was he wasn't built like your typical goalkeeper in terms of height and stature and everything, but to go down as a world-class top keeper when he didn't have the physical attributes in terms of like God-given ones was he for sure overkicked his coverage and
he made
accomplished more than he was probably supposed to.
He made some amazing saves, and I used to look him up. He was only 6'1". So 6'1" for a goalkeeper is short.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays.
100%, yeah.
So you're right. Like he didn't have the typical goalkeeper build, but yet he was still touted as one of the best, if not the best in the world at a certain point. One of the best in history.
And he was playing against, like, at that time, you had goalkeepers like Peter Cech, Edward van der Sar. Like, there were some of the top.
Buffon was a big one.
Like, you had some top.
Yeah.
Like, you want to talk about an era of goalkeepers. And he was always looked at as one of the best.
Yeah. So that's the player that I loved watching the most. Let's go into the favorite game. What game did you love or did you enjoy watching the most?
Honestly, this one's I guess might be kind of a weird one. I was a huge AC Milan fan. I wouldn't say I was a huge AC Milan fan as much as I was a Kaká fan when he was at AC Milan. I really liked him that time period. However, my favorite game in terms of like I remember watching it where I was the whole situation was the Champions League final, AC Milan versus Liverpool and the Liverpool comeback. And I think it was just so crazy because I remember it was really like that was the time when soccer was really starting to be more on TV here. And I was young. I think I was in high school or something like that. So I wasn't really always watching it. And I kind of stumbled upon the game in the first half. And I'm like, this game, by halftime, I'm like, this game's over.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I'm like, let me just leave the second half on. Goal, goal, goal. I'm like, what is happening? And that was one of my first like experience in terms of like watching a crazy top tier game in terms of a final like that. and it being, I mean, that's arguably one of the best Champions League finals of all time. Yeah. Just to stumble upon the game was amazing. That was probably my favorite game that I watched because I didn't really start watching Arsenal until we started to go like this.
Yeah.
What about you?
The game that I remember enjoying the most was actually not even a senior game. It was the World Cup, U17 World Cup. Can't remember the year, but it was Mexico versus Brazil in the final. And we can figure out how old this was because it was the U17 World Cup final, and we had Giovanni Dos Santos and Carlos Vela on that team. And I remember we went to my uncle's house to watch the game. It was like going to be a whole big family thing. And we had, I would say, pretty close to like 40 to 50 people at the house watching this game on television. I brought one of my friends, one of my American friends, who was like, didn't know anything about soccer. We were just like, we must have just been hanging out that day. And I was like, hey, dude, do you want to come to my uncle's house? We're going to watch a game. He's like, yeah, sure. So we went. It was the first time that my friend ever tried quesadillas. And he was like hooked on these things. Like he kept going back and back, and then we ran out. And for weeks after, all I kept hearing was, where can I get more quesadillas? Where can I get more quesadillas by my friend? And
it's actually really funny.
I think Carlos Vela scored a header in that game. Someone scored a header. I think it was him. And when he scored it, my friend was like, dude, he looked over at me. He's like, did you just see what happened? I was like, yeah, we scored a goal. And he's like, no, the guy scored it with his head. And I was like, dude, yeah, that's normal.
Your
like,
family's like, well, who is this gringo you brought who's never had quesadillas and doesn't realize you can score a header?
But we were playing against Brazil, and we beat Brazil in that game 3-0 in the final. Giovanni Dos Santos balled out. Carlos Vela balled out. A couple more guys balled out. And it was one of those games where you're expecting Brazil to be the better team.
Yeah.
And every once in a great while in history, one team will completely the underdog will completely shock the team that's favored to win it. Not just like last minute, like
they
tight.
They
it's like
bossed the game.
Boss the game completely. Yeah. And that was one of those games where Mexico just completely bossed the game. We won the U17 World Cup. That was the first World Cup that we had ever won at any level. We won another U17 World Cup a few years later. But I distinctly remember watching that game and just how crazy we were all going at my uncle's house. Good times.
Wonder if that guy still eats quesadillas.
I'm sure he does, man. Or I'll tell you what, if he hasn't, it's because, like he'll remember. If he sees a quesadilla again, he hasn't had one in a long time, he'll remember, like, when I went to Javi's uncle's house, that was my first quesadilla. I need to get me one of these. Anyway, moving on. Favorite manager. Which manager has been your favorite of all time? And if you say Arteta, I swear.
I'm not going to say Arteta. I've thought about it. No, I have to go with Arsene Wenger, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you never feel like he kind of tainted his legacy by staying a little too long?
It's hard to say. I think he probably stayed longer than he should have. But I think once he stayed for a little bit and the team started going downhill, I think he kept staying at that point to try and fix it before he left, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, like, I think he stayed like a year or two too long. And then after that, I was like, okay, now you're here for like 6 years too long. But he reminds me kind of, he was way more calm than Klopp. But the thing that reminds me of Klopp is that he was able to do so much with so little financially. And he turned some of these players from nothing into these absolute superstars. And I remember looking at some of the teams that we'd field with people who were not at the same level of some of these other clubs. And we would compete and win games. And the thing I think I respected the most about him, he was very disciplined. It seemed like in what his vision was. He didn't stray from that, which I think at times cost us games. But I respected him in terms of, like, this is the way that we play. This is how we're going to play. And if that means we sometimes get whooped when we go up against bigger teams, like, I want us to play a specific way because that's what I believe, and that's how I believe the game's supposed to be played. So I'd have to say Arsene Wenger. He's also, I think, one of the main reasons why I really started falling in love with football as I got older, because that's when I started watching, and he built arguably the best team of all time, the Invincibles. So, What about you?
Well, first of all, let me just add to your Arsene Wenger point. Every time I think of Arsene Wenger, I think of the long jacket.
The one who you couldn't zip up. Oh my!
He used to wear this jacket that went down to his ankles, and then there's like one where he's like trying to zip it up, and it was actually kind of funny because they moved. So they went from who did they have before? Was it Nike that they had before Puma?
Yeah, with Nike, Puma, and now Adidas. Yeah.
So when they went from Nike to Puma, I think he was still there when they made that transition, and then Puma did like a funny little advertisement about how they made jackets where they specifically had a better zipper than the previous ones because of that whole thing where he couldn't get the zipper on. So I thought that was kind of funny. But
forgot about that.
He admits that he stayed too long. He said that in one of the interviews that he said that he realizes now that, like you said, he was trying to fix things, but what he should have done in order to really fix them was just to leave.
Yeah,
because it was already past his time.
Mm-hmm. He stayed for a long time, man.
I'm gonna have to say my boy Jose, man, Jose Mourinho. There's
a special one.
Every once in a while, across any sport, there comes a figure or a personality that can never be replicated, and that it's first of its kind, and most importantly, is authentic. Because in a lot of sports and entertainment, it's exactly what it is. It's entertainment. So you have people who are putting on an act in order to, get views or whatever, push their careers forward, whatever. But typically, they're always based off of somebody else, or they're not authentic. Like I think about like Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor was the first person in MMA to really be who he is in terms of like an actual authentic shit talker who was attractive for sponsorships, who made the sport way better. And then there's people after him that start trying to do the same thing. You just don't get the same feeling.
Right.
I think Jose Mourinho was like that. He was the first manager who said, you know what, screw it. I don't care if the spotlight is on me. I'm going to make the most of it because this is who I actually am. Mm-hmm. And he enjoyed it, and people loved him for it. I think it made him a better manager. I think his managerial attributes were already one of the best. The way he took, when you see that he took Porto to win a Champions League, for me, I was like, if anybody else can take Porto to win a Champions League, like you're doing something very different than everybody else.
Taking any club not from a big league and winning the Champions League is
insane. Every team, not every team, but like Inter Milan, Roma, Porto, even Manchester United and Real Madrid. Everyone still loves him at those places.
Mm-hmm. Like there's players that will come out and say like, I will only play for Jose Mourinho.
Yeah.
Or I'll only do this, like I'll only switch positions for Jose Mourinho. I think Samuel Eto's come out and said that multiple times. Zlatan, same thing.
Just the fact that like you could get sacked from a lot of these places and still the fans love you. Yep. And honestly, most of them wish you wouldn't have gotten sacked. I feel that you didn't get sacked.
Well, even look at Chelsea, right? He's at Chelsea, gets sacked. Then people are begging for him to come back. I think even now people would take him back.
Yeah.
Like for his third go at it.
So he's just funny, man. I would watch games just to see Mourinho on the sideline when he was going up against Klopp, when he was going up against Guardiola when they used to do the El Clásicos in Spain.
Oh yeah.
He was the first manager that really took the focus away from some of the players and put it on himself.
Yeah.
So definitely my favorite.
It's one of the only clubs he's never. I think is it the only club still that he hasn't won a trophy with?
Tottenham.
Yep.
Or Manchester United. No, Manchester United.
He won
FA
Europa
Cup,
League
or
Europa League, I think, or FA Cup, one or the other. But yeah, Tottenham. Weird.
And then the last one, favorite celebration. Which is your favorite celebration of all time?
I'm gonna have to think about this one.
There's been a lot.
Oh, I know.
What is it?
It's. Do you remember the South African World Cup?
Yep.
And I don't know if it's because it was like the first goal of that World Cup. It was an amazing goal. But when the whole South African team runs to the corner and danced together is like one of those, for me, it just like I was thinking about the Jude celebration. I was thinking about different ones, and like I really like the gladiator mask that Dybala does.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one was one of my favorites too.
But I just like the moment of it and the whole team all getting together and having that choreographed dance to me. Like I just, for some reason, that one sticks out in my head. So I have to go with that one, I guess, because the whole thing was just poetic. First goal scored in an African World Cup, like then the whole state with the vuvuzelas going crazy.
Yeah,
and then they did the dance and then the spin and everything.
Yeah, and they use that as they use that clip for promotional purposes all of the time.
And every time I see it, it gives me goosebumps. Still, just thinking about it.
That was against Mexico, the opening game. They scored on Mexico, and it was like no goalkeeper in the world is ever going to get close to saving that. The guy smashed it top bins,
just like perfectly under the crossbar.
And it doesn't help that our goalkeeper was 5'9" in that World Cup.
It wasn't Ochoa?
No, it was.
Was that pre-Ochoa?
Or
was he on the team? And
no,
he was young
I don't think that was
bench?
pre-Ochoa. I would think that was just one of the times when Ochoa wasn't our top goalkeeper. And we had Conejo Perez, who's like this bald guy who's 5'9".
Oh, and there's no way.
They call him, his nickname is the Bunny. And this guy, I swear to you, we're getting off topic, but this guy, bald, 5'9". So if you look at him on a soccer
We're talking about Casillas being short at 6'1". He's 5'9". He's tiny.
Hold on. First of all, let me double check that he's 5'9", because if I keep saying that he's 5'9", and then
it's like he's 6'2".
Somebody's gonna be like, yeah, he's 6'2", 6'3". 5'8". Sorry, I was
even
wrong. 5'8". 5'8".
And if they say 5'8", he actually might be shorter than 5'8".
How crazy is it that he's 5'8" and he's the goalkeeper for the Mexican national team?
Played in a World Cup. Wow.
Anyway, he's an absolute legend in Mexico. It wasn't his fault. That goal wasn't his fault. And that World Cup, he was already older at that World Cup. But this guy, I saw him one time when Mexico came to Soldier Field, and I went to go watch them play, and he was in goal. And they did one of those like cross shots. And he was like scrambling because he's like getting ready for the cross, and the ball starts getting closer to the goal. And I remember this guy taking a couple little steps backwards, like ding, 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 and then literally springing up and like pushing it over the bar. And the way that he looked literally like a bunny, this guy was just like ding, 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 ping, and then just went straight up and like hang time 10 seconds. And he just like knocked it over the bar like no big deal. I was like, that makes sense as to why this guy's 5'8", but he's playing for the Mexican national team.
Because he can jump out of the gym.
Because he can do something like that. I mean, he looked like he was on a trampoline, that guy. But anyway, I keep getting off topic today. I don't know what's going on here.
It's a monster, man.
Yeah, but so good celebration. I think, like I said, I've seen that because they use it in all the promotional clips for the World Cup. For me, I mean, you can never go wrong with a knee slide. I think there's been some amazing knee slides in the time, but in the past. But there was one team specifically that played in like the 3rd division of Iceland. They were very popular on YouTube for a while.
Oh,
do you remember these guys?
Yeah, and they did like the boat rowing.
They did these like planned celebrations that were fantastic. They did, I think they did a toilet one, where like they had a guy sit on a toilet, flushes the toilet and everything. And they had like a guy sitting down being the toilet, a guy being the back of the toilet, a guy being the flush. But then they also had the bicycle, which was amazing because it was like 2 guys
were the bicycle,
or 2 or 3 guys were the bicycle. And then one guy gets on top of the bicycle and starts pedaling. And just the amount, like the funniest thing for me is that these guys were a professional team. And at some point during the week of training, they'd spent 45 minutes to an hour or whatever after training choreographing who's going to do what and all of these. And they had like 5 or 6 of these, and they post them every time they scored a goal or whatever. And they got really popular online for a little bit. But yeah, I remember that time. Because then I think I must have been in high school, and I was like, "Hey guys, can we try some of these celebrations?" I would tell my team, like, "Can we try some of these celebrations out?"
They're like, "Nope." You ever do it? Question for you. Obviously, a lot of the games here in America are on turf. Have you ever knee slid like they do?
Oh, never on turf.
I would assume not on turf, but just in general. Like, have you played on? Because the other part of it, you have to play on a good enough grass field that is wet enough for it to actually make sense. Because otherwise, like if you're playing on most grass fields around here, you'll knee slide from like me to you, and it just looks dumb. Did you see? There was one I think over the weekend where someone tried to knee slide, got caught in the dirt, and just flipped over.
Yeah, well, in the professional matches, they always water the
grass
pitch. So that's why they can always they don't do the knee slide on dry grass. They do it because it's
really
been wet.
yeah.
Yeah. Because that's how they do it at all the professional
matches.
matches.
Have you played in a game where the conditions were perfect for you to knee slide like that? Because I don't think I ever have.
I'm sure I have.
But
I don't remember if I ever took the advantage or if I ever had the chance to like actually knee slide, because it's crazy is that I played most of my career on turf.
Same here, yeah.
Like when I was younger, it was definitely a lot more grass. But when I was old enough to like really want to celebrate and do things like that, I think it was mostly turf. I remember having training sessions where it got like really rainy and it would get muddy and we would just like knee slide and chest slide and for fun. But I don't remember a single time in my career in which it was like I scored a good goal and it was perfect time and I just did a full on knee slide or chest slide.
I missed the opportunity, I think, a few times. So in college, our home turf or our home field for my freshman and sophomore year was grass. It was just used for soccer. We had to our coach would roll it and everything, and we would do after games like divot repair, and it was an amazing grass field. We switched to turf and never did it, sadly.
It's unfortunate.
Next, maybe this year in over 30.
Yes, and that's what I was just gonna say. We did have the State Cup final. No, it wasn't the State Cup. It was it was one of the other the League Cup or whatever, and it was a pretty good game. And I scored a really good goal. Scored a really nice goal. And it was a grass pitch.
In over 30?
In over 30.
This year?
Yeah.
Was it against Livonia?
No, it was against like Detroit United's over 30 team. It wasn't wet, but had it been a little bit wet, I would have definitely knee slid. Like I would have done it.
You thought about it?
Like, yeah, I just couldn't really do it because it wasn't wet, but it was like a perfect moment. Like I wouldn't have looked like an idiot doing it because it was a tough game. It was pretty close and
good team, good players.
It was a final or whatever, but there's still time. I still got a few World Cups left in me.
See Javi limping on stage here soon, pulling a hammy.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the VAR room segment. So again, things that we revisit that happen around the world of football. You brought this up. Adidas making a Jude Bellingham logo, custom Bellingham logo, similar to the Michael Jordan logo.
Yeah. So like I saw a thing online and I started researching it that obviously everyone knows the Jumpman logo, arguably one of the most notable logos worldwide. I think you could go to China, Africa, really anywhere and say, hey, well, who is this? And people are like, oh, that's MJ.
PSG have a kit that's Jordan.
Yeah, sponsored by Jordan. And Neymar's done shoes with the Jordan logo, but Adidas, obviously sponsoring Jude, he's like their talisman, if you will, has come out and said that they're going to make a Jude Bellingham logo. And a lot of players do it with like their initials and stuff, with like numbers and things, and it looks pretty cool. They're just going to do his with the white silhouette of the celebration, which I think somewhat bold, but also the way he's been playing, I can see him going down as one of the all-time greats because to me, he's similar to Haaland in the fact that we talked about this plenty of times. He's changing the game in terms of like having a player who can really do everything you can physically and everything you need to do technically and bring it together. So
yeah,
but it's interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a little early, right? Because if his career does drop off or fall, like. Whatever, yeah. I mean, you're talking about Michael Jordan, who, if you had to ask everyone who the greatest athlete, sportsman in the history of the world was, Michael Jordan would be in that conversation
100%.
Alongside like Muhammad Ali. And I mean, there's only like two.
That's honest. Those are the two that jump out to me. Tiger Woods, probably.
Yeah. But it's crazy that Jude Bellingham has really only been in the limelight for 2 or 3 years. And they're gonna do something similar to Jordan, but
could work out.
And it's been working out so well.
He keeps impressing, man.
Yeah, he's such a good player. All right, and then the blue card trials. I should have done a little bit more research before we brought this up, but I wanted to bring it up anyway. They're implementing trials in certain leagues, and they specifically said, everybody calm down. We're not doing this at the highest levels of football yet. Because everybody's like freaking out, like, oh, they're going to do this in the Bundesliga and they're going to do this in Spain. Like, no, they're not going to do it at the highest levels. They're going to do it in lower levels of professional football around the world. Basically, the gist of it is players can now get a blue card as well as getting a yellow or a red. Players can now get a blue card for a couple different things, which were
Descent.
Descent and tactical fouls.
Those are the two, yeah.
So if you purposely grab somebody's jersey to prevent a counterattack, or if you say something bad to the referee, you'd get a blue card, which means 10 minutes your team plays down, right? Is it 10 minutes or 5?
Yeah, I think it's 10.
I think it's 10 minutes. So your team plays down for a certain amount of time before you can come back on. This naturally raises a lot of questions because you're like, well, first of all, what happens if you get 2 blues?
It's red.
Or what happens if you get a blue and a yellow?
I would assume that would be in red.
That's a red. What happens if a goalkeeper gets a blue card?
That's a great question. Do you sub in? You have to put a field player in goal for 10 minutes?
So,
or do you have to just leave the goalkeeper in and then, because like in hockey, that's what they do, I think, because the goalie doesn't get the penalty, someone else goes off for the goalie and the goalie stays.
So what I read, and I'm probably wrong, but what I read was that you either have the option to put in a field player temporarily as the goalkeeper until your goalkeeper can come back on, or to sub your goalkeeper, but then your goalkeeper can't come back on. So you get to make the choice.
I think the whole idea of it's really dumb.
I agree. Why do they need to keep adding things? You know what I mean? Like the game is, there's certain things that we've talked about that are just simple and effective.
Yep.
You no longer have to pass it forward on the kickoff. Doesn't change the game, but it makes sense. You no longer have to leave your penalty box or your 18-yard box. You no longer have to leave it on
a goal kick.
Goal kick.
Yep, makes sense.
Makes sense.
It wasn't an advantage to the attacking team to have to pass it out.
Why are you confusing everyone? Because when I went on social media and you see all these posts about the blue card, the number one comment is people saying, well, first of all, they should have the referees try and figure out what they're doing without the blue card.
Like, why are we adding in something? Like, we can't get the calls right now. Now we want to add in another dimension to make it even more complicated and then mess that up.
So
I feel like they're trying to kind of do away with like the game within the game, if that makes sense. Because like putting extra punishment on tactical fouls, people would probably try and do less of them. But to me, like that's the thing I like so much about soccer is it's one of the few sports where the referees, they have a good amount of control, but they also really don't. Like in basketball, the refs can call fouls very easily for one team compared to another team, and it's very clear and it's very obvious, and they can add points to a team by just getting one team in foul trouble and making it a thing. Same thing with the NFL. Like the refs have so much control. Well, I think the game is so pure that the refs have so little control.
Right.
And like they're trying to clamp down on all of it.
Well, that's the thing is like in those sports, the referees have to have the control. Like they have to be calling fouls left and right, flags on the play, things like that in order for the game to flow the right way. Whereas we talk about football is like you essentially have to be invisible. If you can be invisible as a referee,
you did your job.
That's a good refereeing performance. So not saying that you shouldn't call anything because you're gonna have to call fouls and things like that, so that the game doesn't get out of hand. But yeah, you're right. It's a sport in which you're trying to get the control. You're trying to keep the control away from the referees in order for it to be a good match.
100%. So I there's a few things that we can change, like we talked about the Arsene Wenger offside rule, things like that. So it doesn't change a ton, changes things slightly, maybe more goals. But this to me is a big change, and then you're gonna have teams are gonna have to practice playing down a man, which they do for a little bit now. But now you have to practice playing down for 10 minutes. What do you do for 10 minutes? Do you sit in? How does it work? I don't know.
And
I hope it doesn't
somebody also mentioned it's like what's going to happen when Barcelona versus Real Madrid ends up being 5 versus 5 because everybody's just talking shit to the referees the whole time. And so the game, and there's like literally 5 players in each of the sin bins.
Honestly, I would rather like that. Like, you know, we talk about things that are like, what if you did away with penalty shootouts and every 15 minutes each team lost a player on the field?
Right.
Like that would make more sense to me than doing something, because then you'd get down to a 5v5 game on a big field. Like someone's going to score a goal.
Right.
But I didn't even think about that. Could you imagine watching a game and next thing you know, there's 6 players out there for one team and 4 out there for another, and it's trying to cover all that space?
I think to institute something like that is going to be difficult because the things that players can say to referees right now and not even get booked for it is crazy. So for me, it's like, where are you going to draw the line on what you can say and what you can't say? It's adding way too much complexity to something that is completely unnecessary. Because if they do say something bad to the referee, give them a yellow card.
Mhm.
And if they do commit a tactical foul, give them a yellow card. Why do we need to add a different color to just make it more complex?
I also see it could, like, to your point, it can make things so bad because this year, for example, if you show a yellow card, you know what I mean? If you get tackled and you go like this, you're supposed to get a yellow card.
Right.
Half the time they give it and half the time they don't. Which, again, okay, doesn't change the game too much. But if you're sending a player off for one team for 10 minutes and not for another team, that now all of a sudden there becomes a big advantage in terms of, like, if a ref is going to try and lean one way, you can do that very easily of like, oh, you said F you to me, blue card. You said F you to me, I'm just not going to. I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
That now these teams are playing down 10, 20 minutes a game because if you get one or two of them, playing a quarter of the game down a man.
And there's always the part about what is going to happen if you're playing, let's say, with 9 players or 8 players. You're doing a lot more running than you are with 11 players because you're going to have to cover more ground.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that there's going to be a game that's going to end up 7v7 or 6v6. But can you imagine trying to be 8v8, trying to run over a pitch?
Yeah. You're like, yeah.
I don't know. Physically, I don't. There's a lot of questions. But they did clarify and said they're going to do it at some of the beginning stages or some of the lower ranks so that, you know, they don't freak people out. My problem with these kinds of things is that when they start trials, there's a much bigger chance that it gets implemented versus it doesn't get implemented. Like, they're not going to say, oh, yeah, this was a big failure, we're just going to scrap it, because then that's going to make them look bad.
Right.
Waste of money, waste of resources, whatever. So they're going to try and push the idea. It's the same thing with VAR. A VAR is like, no matter how bad VAR becomes and how many mistakes there is, they will never scrap it because then they're admitting that they failed tremendously and they wasted a ton of money, resources, and time into something that was a failure.
Agreed.
Agreed. All right, so we were going to do the off the pitch segment, but we're running. We're gonna. This podcast is gonna end up being way too long if we do that. So we'll wait for Georgie. We'll wait because this the off the pitch segment for today was supposed to be Bitcoin and crypto.
Oh, we gotta wait for Georgie.
We gotta wait for Georgie to do that
my.
because right now Georgie's gonna. If Georgie sees this, he's gonna
lose his whole. The one time I'm not there.
Yeah. So we'll wait for that for the next one, but we will finish off with the fun facts, which, if you guys are in the United States, which most of you are, you'll know that the Super Bowl just happened this past weekend. The biggest comparisons that they always draw to is the World Cup, and people argue which sport is more popular, which everyone knows. Soccer is actually more popular than American football, and that's not like a being biased type of thing. It's a statistic. Viewership
just
numbers.
A fact.
It's just a fact.
Jack.
Viewership numbers is crazy because you think, okay, well, it is a little misleading only because the NFL is only in the United States, whereas like the World Cup final is the whole world.
Keep in mind, though, the NFL competes in the United States. Well, they play games in Germany. They play games in England.
Yeah,
and people watch it worldwide. When I was studying abroad in Mexico, it was like a big thing. The family that I was staying with, they were big Los Empacadores fans.
Yeah,
the Packers, which I thought they would have just called them the Packers, but they don't.
Yeah, well, listen. Here's the thing. In the United States, they also claim to be world champions.
When they win that,
when they win the league in the United States,
yeah.
There's nobody, you know what I mean. So, but anyway, so I think this is from the last Super Bowl. I don't know if the stats. I don't have the stats for this past Super Bowl, but pretty similar, I would assume. 113 million people watched last year's Super Bowl with Rihanna doing the halftime. Or should I say 113 people watched the halftime show and the commercials.
It happened to stay around some for part of the football.
And the crazy thing is that the World Cup final draws a global audience of nearly 1.5 billion.
It's not even. They're not even the same
So you're
stratosphere.
You're talking close to 10 times as much viewership, which makes sense because, again, it's a world sport versus it's just the United States. But then we compared it to also, or I was telling Joe, I was like, well, the World Cup is also every 4 years. So when you're waiting for something for 4 years, it's going to be crazy because obviously you're going to be like, if it only happens every 4 years, you're going to watch it. Whereas the Super Bowl happens every year. So is it a big event? Yeah, but it's like, we only have to wait a year before we watch it again. So then we compared it to the Champions League final because the Champions League final obviously happens every single year. And the Champions League final drew, let me see here. I think it was on here somewhere. So the last Champions League final drew 450?
Yeah, 450 million.
450 million viewers.
4x. That's yeah.
So 4 times the Super Bowl, which is crazy.
Should we rename American football to soccer and just let football be football?
Or should we rename it hand egg? Because that's a little bit more accurate description than football, right?
Yeah.
Hand egg. So anyway, it's just crazy because now I'm one of those people that I don't like to make the facts seem a certain way because I'm trying to push a narrative, because the biggest thing that people are going to say was, yeah, it's a global, you're talking about a global sport versus just the United States. But there's a reason why it's a global sport and why there's not American football everywhere else around the world.
All you need, man, is one thing. Just a round. You don't even need a ball. You need something that can kind of be round, and you can play football anywhere.
I did make a soccer ball once out of tape when I was younger. Yeah, I didn't have a soccer ball for whatever reason. Not because I was like super poor and I couldn't afford one. I think I just, for whatever reason, we just didn't have one. And I was young and I wanted to play. So my mom worked at a labeling company and they had like all sorts of different types of tape. And she had the packing tape. And if you just start wrapping the packing tape into like a bunch of little
balls, it
things, and then eventually makes a somewhat usable soccer ball. I remember using that once. Anyway,
interesting.
So that's the fun fact: 450 million versus 115 million. I think this year's Super Bowl was a little bit more. I couldn't get the numbers on it, but let me. You know what? Let me find it right now. I'm gonna find it. Super Bowl viewership. So 123 million. There we go.
Still, I mean, they added what, 13 million?
Yeah, it's the most watched telecast in U.S. history with over 123 million viewers. Still, maybe a little less than 10 times less than what the World Cup is.
It will be interesting. So to your point, like, hey, this is it's only watched here. The Copa America is this summer. I'm interested to see what the viewership on that is compared to the World Cup, or compared to the Super Bowl and the World Cup too. I guess
should still be more.
It should still be more. Well, it'd be interesting to see
because it'll be more because it's hosted here now. So now you're going to get a lot more viewership in the United States, where you're going to get the same amount of viewership in Brazil, South America, anywhere there. So interesting. But I think that's it for today. As I said, Georgie is not here because he's living the dream in England right now.
Living the good life, man.
This guy, I told him he should just move there.
Well,
he said there's a 20-year waiting period on season tickets for Liverpool.
That's insane.
So
that's insane.
You better start applying for your babies. If you have babies, start applying for your babies' season tickets because it's impossible to get one over there right now. You can only do the transfer. I do like the way that they have everything set up. Like, you can't gouge ticket prices in Liverpool.
Yeah, because
in the Premier League.
Because you have to have like the ID with the person
going. They do it specifically so that it's still tailored to
the people.
Which
I will say that FIFA does a good job of that for the World Cup. At least the World Cup that I went to, you had to apply. You couldn't resell your ticket, and you paid a flat fee. I mean, we went to 5 World Cup games, $100 a game.
Yeah, because you can't. It'd be crazy. Because I mean, that's what people do with like Taylor Swift concert tickets.
Yeah, so you pay thousands of dollars. It's stupid.
They buy them for a crap ton of money and then they resell them for 4 times as much.
Yep.
Anyway, that's it for this one. Make sure you guys are following us on the TikTok at the NGW Podcast. That's also the Instagram and the Twitter. YouTube is youtube.com/@the_NGW Podcast for all the full length videos. And then you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I think there's like one more that we're on that I don't even know of. But make sure you follow us on all of that. And we will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.